I think that again. I think that's fascinating, really, that it is different regionally. Like, um, I suppose that I always get the feeling when I talk to like we've got like British clients or American clients that there's more of an excitement around a technology coming out, whereas when I've talked to over in, like the Asian side, it's been more of a oh, there's a new technology coming out. We need to sort of like, well, let's make sure what this is before we start um like throwing everything at it. Uh,
Yeah.
so have you found that like now within like the bigger companies, have you found that like cybersecurity teams are actually having almost division's the wrong word, but are they having like a team of people who are now just purely cloud based and they're the ones they're like a cloud security team? Has
Yeah.
that been like a new introduction? Like, has they been introduced recently,
Yeah.
or has that been like, is it quite recent, or has that been a sort of a stepped approach that you've found?
I think it is quite recent. I mean, again, going back to like 2016, let's call it 2016 to 2019,
Mhm.
vast majority of the customers that we interacted with, we were talking to the cloud teams, not the security teams. The use cases that we were tackling were very much security related. Let's say like 80 to 90% of what we were doing was security problems or tackling security problems. But the security teams in those days were still a little bit more traditional. When you went to talk to those security teams, the things that they would ask you about is like, well, where's my AWS firewall? Because that's what they're used to. Or they're wondering about, where's my AWS endpoint security solution? And where's my like AWS VPC threat detection module and things like that? Because, I think historically a lot of security teams come from networking. And so there's always been this kind of heavy emphasis. And if you rewind like to the beginning of my technology career in the late 90s, early 2000s, a lot of the time the first name that was on people's list around security was one of the big firewall vendors. And so that has been for a long time one of the leading cybersecurity constructs. So coming back to your question, I think it's only in the kind of last 4 years, 2019 to the present, that we've started to see security teams either have people get trained up on cloud so that they understand the full breadth of what cloud security really entails, or cloud teams have people that have migrated over onto a security specialization. And so now you do, to your point, you do see these specialized cloud security teams. But I don't think they're the majority yet. Like I think within these larger enterprises that have, let's say, tens of, if not hundreds of people within the organization tasked with security, yes, there you will see it. But on smaller teams, smaller, let's say mid-market, 500-person organization, unless it's a born in the cloud digital native that specifically allocates headcount towards this, it's not that common yet. So we still see a lot of kind of separation of cloud from security, or we see teams that are all wrapped together. It's cloud and IT and security all wrapped up in one team at smaller organizations.
Right. Yeah, that's what I thought I was getting really. That it's not the common thing at the moment. It's still building, it's still going because obviously like now to API security. I mean that it's such a massive attack surface that
Yeah.
I bet majority of the companies that you work with must it's almost like so vast that they almost don't know where to start. And I
Yeah.
suppose is that what you as a company is that where you're taking them really is to take them on that journey that gives them a start point and then to build from there, or have you got
Yeah.
a different approach?
No, it very much is kind of building from a starting point of understanding what the problems are, right? And to some extent, it kind of mirrors those early days of cloud security in the sense that, you start with that visibility and you start with kind of pulling together a list of APIs. And then, people tend to be, okay, now what? I've got this list. What do I do with it? And then you've got kind of that secondary function of like assessment. And by the way, like all of this process has kind of been encapsulated now into the I'll say like insert asterisk here, SPM, security posture management. And you're seeing, a whole wave of companies that are like, we're data security posture management, identity security posture management. And really what it means is like get visibility, build an inventory. Ideally that's a self-updating real-time inventory. So you've got some kind of ongoing scanning mechanism to update, new API came online, old API went offline, et cetera, that kind of change. but then assess that and help to prioritize. So that's one of the problems that is pretty typical. Also on the cloud security side, the same organizations that don't have visibility, once you give them that inventory, they're like, oh crap, this is way too much stuff for us to wrap our heads around and deal with. It's a little bit lower scale on the API side for a lot of organizations right now. They don't have quite as many APIs as they have, let's say, infrastructure assets in their cloud environments. But it is, to your question, it is very much like, okay, I've got that visibility. We can do some assessment work. What do we really need to worry about with API security? And so to that end, we've been doing a lot of work on, doing research on the different topics relative to API security. We've just finished up like an analysis of kind of 10 years of data that we've scraped together. On the bottom of our website, you can find this API data breach tracker where we track all of the publicly disclosed either breaches or disclosures from security researchers around APIs. And there's a couple common threads that you can pull out of there. So when we go talk to customers, we try to help them understand either on taking one of those as a use case or as a case study, or on kind of some of the thematic things that we've been able to pull out of there. But, for instance, people don't understand that the biggest risks around APIs are not, the network exposure or the fact that an API exists or is sitting on a public network or exposed to the internet. It's the fact that you're not doing authorization very well, or that you're not authorizing server side on every API call. Decoupling the security model from client to server is actually not a very good construct on APIs, because guess what? Hackers, if they're going after their API, they're not going to go through your client. They're going to go after it programmatically. They're going to go after it through Postman. They're going to write their own code to attack your API. So it really comes down to a lot of kind of application constructs for the most part. And that's been very much an educational process, working with a lot of customers to kind of identify the risks in both API security at large, and then within their specific API security, their specific API implementations. It's been a lot of fun, though, I have to say, and I've learned a lot myself along the way.